nice article in the Managing Madrid blog. Wonderful lads that do a great job there. And worth reading about that man there. Karim Benzema needs the rest, and the numbers reveal why.
Times ended up almost looking like a 6-3-1. Some very good writing about that on the Managing Madrid website. First-rate podcast as well. Of course, Fede Valverde was a huge part of the equation.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. Today we have a recurring guest who's been here a couple times in the last couple years, Ali from StatsBomb. Ali is the man who helped design a lot of StatsBomb's cool stuff that lets them collect data. Ali, how's it going at StatsBomb? Long time no see on Managing Madrid.
Yeah, man, going good. It's been a busy year. We obviously we were acquired in late summer by Huddle, and we're quite excited about what we can do as a group. Hopefully, a lot of new products and new innovations being pushed to the product throughout the first half of 2025. So it's been a whirlwind. It's been quite exciting, but I'm excited to be here and talk some football.
Without giving anything that you can't give away. Well, anything cool since the acquisition? Any new directions coming in that you could maybe let us know?
Yeah, it's just been nice now with the whole Huddle product suite from Wisecout to Sports Code to Insight. So now you have access to everything from, I think Wisecout just launched their physical tracking data, so we have more access to physical data. That's quite cool to integrate and think about how you'd use in a recruitment context. So you just have access to more tools, and you have to make decisions about which to use. But in general, the depth and breadth of data is outstanding, and I'm quite excited at what we can cook up.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. Well, today, everyone, we're going to be talking about European football. We're going to get into all the different stats and things Ali's seeing from his perspective. It's going to be very data-driven. And just as a reminder, this is the real deal. All right, another season, and as usual, there's maybe only a few contenders, but every year the parts are shifting. Some of the contenders from previous years are no more, or one major one this year, and some of the people from previous years have gotten better, maybe the best Atlanta team in a while, things like that. So let's talk. I think we should do a tier list, Ali, and let's start with the highest tier. I'm going to create a little graphic, but let's start with tier one. Who's the top, the cream of the crop in Europe? And let's also estimate for the fact that we suck, but we always suck from October to December. So maybe you guys haven't been the best Arsenal, but you're going to get healthier. So let's definitely forecast here, not assume we'll be the same teams we are now.
Yeah, so forecasting, some of these teams are trickier to forecast. The way I think of tiers is, it's been 16 to 20 games or so this year. You try to take into account injuries, some time to gel if you've had a lot of summer transfers. But I do still wait in December. I do still wait like the calendar year a little higher, right? So we have seen Real Madrid from February to May last year. We have seen Arsenal from February to May last year just go on crazy winning streaks. So we know they're capable of that. One team is probably a little more have had a little less chop and change and is embedding a new superstar. The other a little more injuries. So the way I think of tiers is not just performances this season. Although I by the time it's Jan Feb, I am if your performances really suck, it's very rare to see major turnarounds, and we can talk a little bit about what that means for in the Madrid context. But I don't think Madrid have been horrendous. They've been average maybe, and underwhelming because well, we'll talk more Madrid later, I think. But I think just to go back to the tiers point, yeah, I look at the 16 to 20 games this year. I try to weight it to big matches when your team is healthy, and there's definitely still some 2024 waiting. So what have we seen from Liverpool over the last 12 months? Arsenal, Bayern, PSG, etc. Yeah, so right now I would say there's a clear top three. I don't know if you want to call them tier one, but I do think if we were to start a Champions League in the knockouts, home and away, everyone's fit and fresh tomorrow, these would be the three clear favorites. And I think they, I don't know where you want to start, but we can start with Liverpool, who are, top of the league, top of the Champions League table, and squarely in my tier one with a new coach who's doing quite a good job.
Yeah. Sorry, I was setting up the tier list. 100%. Liverpool, I mean, there's no question, because, they were a historically great team that needed a few tweaks to keep going last year. And it feels like those tweaks, when they were made, Klopp, they worked in spite of Klopp, it feels like at times, Liverpool, the last couple of years, in spite of his recruitment, his preferences. And so I think playing slower is just like done wonders for them. It's so funny watching a team used to playing exhausted that's not exhausted all the time.
Yeah, it does. It suits their average age a lot more, right? So they're now officially above average in terms of age profile, which hasn't happened in a long time. But their key contributors, Salah, Van Dijk, who else? Robertson, Alisson, and even Joe Gomez, Luis Diaz, and Jota are not. They're not youngsters. They're peak age professionals. And so this is a team that's from an age profile perspective set up to win now, and definitely the tweaks. The tweaks Slot has made have really helped them. Their on-ball game, I think, their on-ball game has really improved. I think defensively they've maybe gone down a notch, and some of that is the approach, but some of that is also the players being a little older, it's harder to press when you're and play Tuesday, Sunday in this beginning part of the schedule. So this is by any metric like one of the top teams in Europe. I will say the caveats here seem to be like, I believe they haven't played anyone good away from home. Like Anfield has done a lot of the heavy lifting in this first half of the schedule. I believe they have had one away game in the Premier League versus a top 10 side, which was the Arsenal game. And Arsenal finished that game with the entire back four, I believe, hurt. And Arsenal probably edged that game in terms of performance. And then in the Champions League, they got a little lucky with Girona and Leipzig being their away games. And Girona and Leipzig are both having quite bad years by their standards. We haven't really seen this team tested against top opposition. They caught Real at probably a bad time as well.
Worst time. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we haven't really seen them against the elite of the elite. I would say maybe the Leverkusen beatdown is one of the big signs that they're good. That Arsenal game gave me pause for sure, because I think they struggled at the Emirates a little. But I rate Arsenal quite highly, as we'll get to in the tiers. So this is a very interesting team, to be honest, and they deserve. They've set themselves up beautifully for the second half of the season, right? Top of the Champions League is now seeded. They're top of that table. They're going to finish top. They have I believe, 9-point lead if they win their games in hand. Maybe it's 7 off Chelsea in the Premier League. And so they've set themselves up beautifully. There are concerns. The off-ball, the pressing stuff is not that good. The game, in fact, that was encouraging from a pressing perspective was the City game. That's the first game where they went back to that Klopp style mid-block. Let's press and get the crowd into it. And but they seem to have a lot of tools in their toolbox, right? Like they can go back to that Klopp style. It's still the same team. Same players. The coach seems fantastic. The adjustments he's made in second halves they've been slow starters, which is both a good and a bad thing. It's good to see coach make adjustments at halftime, but also probably not super sustainable. And then the squad depth is quite good, to be honest. Like, people talk about Salah dependency. I think Salah had a summer off, which both most European and South American stars didn't have. I think their depth actually struggles more at center back. I think like a Konate.
It's funny, actually. Salah starts off the season because he plays the AFCON. So Salah has these hot starts here and there. That's funny.
Right, but no AFCON this year, right? No AFCON this year. So it is. Yeah, I agree. He usually Salah has a little underrated by this fact. People forget these AFCONs. He flies halfway across the world, has to play for a stodgy Egyptian side where he's running a lot on shitty pitches.
Yeah.
And comes back a little tired for it. So yeah, it's contract year Salah. He's on fire. It
is contract year Salah. It's weird to me. Like, he really wants to stay and play for Liverpool, and they really don't want to overspend on him. It's such a weird standard.
It is a weird blinking contest, right? Because he wants, from his perspective, staying in the Premier League makes sense, right? You become a Liverpool legend. You probably finish top 5 all time in EPL goals. There's no better, the family's probably settled there, etc. And from a Liverpool perspective, you don't want to be paying any 36-year-old top of the league money. This isn't, this is a club that's is not, they've never had the highest wage bill in the Premier League or whatever. They've always had a salary structure. I think the staring contest is about how many years and like with what incentives. I think they get there. I don't see Salah at because who are the suitors, right? Like PSG, maybe. Where's he gonna go? That makes sense. It's very hard to move at that age for real money.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, the thing with him is, if he's like anything like Lewandowski has been for the last few years, where you could say even with his bad patch of form, he was worth the money for Barcelona. If he's like that, it's hard to find just refined poachers who can start from out wide like that, who just score again and again. I think also just that profile is so rare, as we've talked about. There's Salah, Saka, Lamine, and then there's everyone else. And like that short list, it's not like there's some big pipeline that keeps getting added. You get a few of these guys. We have like Goulet. He's not physical enough. Like, it's hard to find these left-footed guys who play.
They add a lot of balance to the team for sure. It's funny. What was it, 3 years ago, when there was a big should we renew Salah or Mane debate, and Liverpool obviously made the right choice there. Mane is kind of fallen off a cliff physically. This is a very good team. I don't think they're quite elite. I think the off-ball stuff exists. I don't think Gravenberch has been playing out of his mind. I think people underrate the Liverpool youngsters like Curtis Jones, Gravenberch, Harvey Elliott when he's back. I think they add a lot of energy, and you need the inning eaters, right? Minutes eaters in the beginning part of the season. So people are fresh. Up front, Diaz, Gakpo, Darwin, Jota. None of them are perfect. None of them are superstars, but you're riding the hot hand there, and there's enough quality in the squad. I'd be worried about. I think Konate's been injured for a few weeks, and they've already dropped points twice when he's been injured. The center back depth is really the big problem. They haven't really replaced Matip type, like a third center back who can come in and do a job for you, and then defensive midfielder, which has historically been an issue for that club team. I don't think they've ever really replaced Fabinho. Gravenberch has done a fantastic job this year.
They might have their replacement this summer when Aurelien goes for 80 to 100 million or something. It will take that much for him this time, I think. I think times have changed. We'd take 100 million for him in a heartbeat. It's a lot of money for a DM who hasn't performed well for us, and they could probably use him. I think Robertson worries me a lot. Just watching him play, he sucks.
Yep.
It's like watching Kyle Walker, Jordan Henderson, the same.
People who have been watching that team, flagged this maybe 12 months ago. They were a little early on this, right? People who knew flagged this. Tsimikas is decent, but definitely the fullbacks. When Trent is out, Bradley, who's a good youngster but can get gout. Like I said, I don't think this team is a little weird because you have the new coach, you have the kind of collapse at the end of last season from exhaustion. The coach is gone. He's such a big figure in their recent history. And then you have this weird home-heavy schedule where you played City at their worst time. You've played Chelsea at a weird time where they're not ready. You've played all those games at Anfield. If you look at, like I said, the only 3 away games you'd say are challenging. They've gone to Arsenal, played badly. They've gone to Newcastle, and that's a hard place to go, and they drew. And then they went to United at the end of the Ten Hag era. So they've gotten a little lucky about when they've played people, Real Madrid, Girona, like we said. And so we haven't really had a test for Liverpool at the highest level. And I don't think we're going to get a test anytime soon, actually. So I think the Arsenal game, the Anfield Arsenal game is in May. So that's very far away. The league might be finished by then. And their Christmas schedule, maybe we get some cup ties, but they're getting a bye in the round of 16, round of 32 in the Champions League. But just from eye test, this team is an attacking monster, right? Like they can really get you. Trent is one of the best deep passers in the world. They found the midfielders. They found the right tempo. Like you said.
It reminds me a lot of Real Madrid from like Mourinho's Ancelotti to Zidane, where the core is the same, but they just play slower. And it's not about fast or slow. It's just they control the whole game more. Yep. And you can't get at them as much as you did when they didn't keep the ball. Liverpool have been long overdue a shift. I mean, they've been shifting that way, but under Klopp, it's never a prolonged shift away from just sprinting.
Yeah. They did. So there was a period in the middle where Thiago came in. Wijnaldum was a good kind of press resistant midfielder, and it was less rock and roll. And it makes sense. Again, it makes sense for aging squad. They had no signings this summer, so they're sitting on some cash as well. Like I said, I think. How much can Salah keep this up? Because it's a little crazy still for him. Can they avoid backline injuries? And let's see them against some tougher opposition, because some of these games, the Brighton one comes to mind. They've been a little open, and Kelleher has saved them.
They were not the most impressive against us. We even missed a penalty. I was like, we shouldn't have been in that game, honestly, like the way we were playing. But
if you ask me, I'm a little biased, and we'll talk about our next team. I'm a little biased. If you ask me today, next Tuesday, it's a cup final. It's Arsenal, Liverpool. Who's favored? I think I'd say Arsenal. Now that doesn't. I think Liverpool are probably going to win the league. They've built up enough good fortune and points and clutch moments to win the league. But I think in one-offs, they can be got on the break a little. They need some tweaks in their defensive schemes, and they need a little luck. I don't think the system is set up to not give the striker a lot of the right profiles at striker. Like they're playing Darwin as though he's this weird false nine and not playing to his strengths at all. Jota's been in and out of the lineup. But again, awesome historic squad with 4 or 5 all-timers. One last push. We've seen this a lot, right? We've seen this with Madrid. We've seen this with. It's not so much the quality of the coach as the quality of the spine. Your spine is still your spine wherever you go.
For sure.
They've been in so many big games, right? Like they won't be intimidated.
On that note, so obviously we talked about Salah. And have you heard anything about Salah and Saudi? Would he be willing to go there if they paid him enough? Is that and then also same note on Trent. Is it really the last dance? It sounds like the last dance for Trent there. It sounds like he's rejected offers. It sounds like Jude got to his head, convinced him of glory.
On Salah, I think he thinks, I have no clue, but my impression is he thinks the Saudi money is there in 2-3 years anyways. So I think it's like right now for Salah, it's, if you think about Salah, what he's actually missing in his career is kind of more worldwide. Like this guy has never been a top 3 in Ballon d'Or, and he's going to end up top 5 EPL goals ever. He's been a little underrated by kind of mass media. He's had some unlucky breaks, lost a lot of finals. Courtois might have cost him a Ballon d'Or there one year, one of those years. Mane beat him on penalties to win an AFCON and finish 3rd one year. So he's had a little bit of a. In general, this Liverpool team is underrated if you just look at trophies, right? Like Van Dijk having 1 Premier League, Salah having 1 Premier League.
And he probably sees it as his chance now with Guardiola and like City. This isn't something that fixes in one transfer window for Man City. I don't think.
I do not think so as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about their collapse real quick and Arsenal. Man City, Arsenal are the next 2. So
So I don't even have City in my tier 2 right now. I've been quite early on this, so people can't accuse me of overreacting. I've been saying this even from the run-in last year, where they had a lot more scares than they usually do. I think that squad is just old. I don't think there's anything like. I think you play 4 years in a row where you're, late in the season playing. You play the Euros, you go to the World Cups, you're going to the World Cup next summer. And then I think they sold, I saw this tweet, I think Romeo Lavia, Cole Palmer, Morgan Rogers, Delap's kid who plays for Ipswich. These are all four or five youngsters who are playing for Champions League sides, or in Delap's case, a Premier League side. And they just give you legs, right? Like the youngsters come in and they give you legs. This has been coming prior to Rodri, and then Rodri really exasperated it, right? Because Rodri is the only legs there. He's the only peak age performer in that midfield. He's obviously very, 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 very good as well. But Gundogan at 35 is not the solution. Neither is Kovacic, etc. Again,
I think people almost started overlooking the shrinking margins with which they've been winning for about 2.5 seasons. Since the treble, it's been downhill. And the way they won the stretch of the treble was like low margin, tight wins. And then they never went back to dominating teams. And
I make this joke a lot, where the City team prior to the treble was probably the better like fifth gear team, right? Like the Sané, Aguero teams were probably, they had better like fifth, sixth gears. And so you'd have the pastings, the 5-0s. And then you'd go, okay, the game model was a little rough in big games. They'd get caught, they'd get roughed up. They went the other way, but in that low margin environment, and as Arsenal are figuring out, when every game is kind of a lower variance, it takes something out of your players, mentally, physically. And the squad, look, it's very simple. There's no like tactical solutions to this. Julian Alvarez played 25 90s for them last year, scored a lot of goals and ran a whole lot. I don't know. Point me to the squad in Europe that has only one striker. Like they have one striker on that squad. Like if Haaland goes down,
our squad.
Yeah. But you guys have like, at least Rodrigo is kind of like pretends to be a striker. Vinny can play there. Jude can play there. Like, so who do they have? They have him and maybe Foden.
Foden, we've been so vindicated on Phil here. I mean, I saw him last season. Pep didn't want the guy receiving unless he was going to shoot. Like, he didn't want him receiving when he had to make decisions. He never has put him in a role where Foden makes decisions that make the team click. It was always like they made Foden some play finisher last year. And
yeah, he is a play finisher. Even on the play finish, I will defend Foden, which I've typically criticized them a lot. Obviously, this year there's something going on, right? Like he's not even finishing plays. Foden has, I believe his goals and assists per 90 is tied with Cristiano in Premier League history. So like the guy is an output machine. I agree with all his criticisms about like, can he play deeper? Can he make a team tick, etc. But this year he's not even scoring. And so I think I've heard there are reports about personal stuff, about fitness stuff. I think Pep said last week that he wasn't playing, even though he was. But I think that hints at, I don't think he's right. I don't know what it is, if it's a physical thing, it's a mental thing. Look, that team is just in a weird spot. I think definitely they know they're not good enough. And so the mental starts to go a little, they're exhausted. But again, they've made a lot of sales here with Alvarez, with... who else have they sold? Cole Palmer. All the
biggest one was Palmer. Just if he's there, their outlook looks a little better. I feel like just they need someone with energy, with intensity.
And they've taken that money and they've done nothing with it. I don't know if it's because they missed out on their targets. I don't know if it's the looming.
Reporters Pep said, I feel like Pep and City started just getting complacent. They every year, like last year, I thought they was like one of their first years being like a legacy veteran team, and. Like the treble year, they still had added Haaland. They were more of a veteran team, but still felt fresh. Last year, it felt like watching 2017-18 Real Madrid, like a later stage of the same team. And it seems Pep told them to not go too much after players and wait the following summer to rebuild.
Yeah, like they made basically essentially. This is why they wanted Declan, right? People were like, "Oh, he'd play backup for Rodri." No, they play alongside each other. They need legs. They just need legs.
And Jude would replace KDB is better than
exactly,
Foden.
exactly. Yeah. And so they've just missed out. They've been weirdly conservative in the market. They're sitting on a lot of cash. So the only thing I will say
is it not dumb to earmark a player Real Madrid wants to go after, whether that's Aurelien Tchouameni or Jude Bellingham? Is it not stupid to like plan for that one guy and not even like sign a replacement? I guess they signed Nunes, but what is he?
Yeah, I think Madrid fall into the trap a lot. The top teams, they don't pivot a lot. It's like, oh, these are the best players in the world. Football is about having the best players in the world, and so they won't. Oh, we didn't get him. Let's just figure out a solution. Let's depend on our best coach, etc., etc. I agree. I think I've argued this on the Madrid side. I'll argue this on the City side. I think you should pivot every now and then. Okay, Mbappe isn't here this summer, next summer. Maybe we should put together a plan B.
Well, we did. We signed Joselu before Qatar took him. But this year it's bizarre because both City and Madrid just dropped the ball on multiple positions, you could say, in the same.
Yeah, with Madrid, it's more. I think it's more like the cash is allocated for Mbappe this year. We have to wait a year or two, etc., etc.
No, it's because they didn't want. Well, I guess we were never going to sign a striker, but in Joselu's case, it was like, okay, like if we can keep Joselu, we do. If Qatar offers him a crazy money, Joselu's don't grow on trees. He's a very good. Yeah, he's rare. Players who accept that role, who offer 15, 20 goals, very rare. And then with the Lenny Yoro situation, it was just not wanting to get one up by Jorge Mendes. I actually agree with that because Jorge Mendes is a strange operator. I think sometimes you have to make sacrifices.
It's all long-term, maybe the correct plays, right? But it does sacrifice your short-term a little. I will say on the City side, they have been banged up even on the younger players. Like Stones is not that old to be this hurt all the time.
He was hurt when they won the treble. We've known when he started that final, it's like, okay, you can't even rely on him to be in the final most seasons.
Oscar Bob, who is quite a good young player, broke his leg in preseason. So they've had a little bit of a rough. This is what happens, right? Mentally as well. Like the players are a little exhausted. You're depending on you guys. So injuries beget injuries, I think is kind of the point as well. Like Kovacic came in for Rodri, had to play so much and immediately went out injured because he's a bit, he's a squad player. He's not used to playing.
It's also very strange, but this is the longest period of Pep's career where he has shifted to playing the defense, low margin stuff. He never did this at Bayern. He never did it at Barca. He didn't do it until the end at City. And the way he did it at City, like the Champions League forced his hand, I get it. But it's just so weird to, Michael Cox, Zonal Marketing, he's written about this. But every great coach, there's a point in their career when the same bets they made on attacking, they start making on defending and they become boring. And I feel like we really saw it with Pep last season when at the Etihad against us, they weren't too scared of finishing the job. They could have finished the job. We're exhausted. We can't get out of our half. But instead of using that, they play around our block, just because they're scared. And I feel like we saw this with Mourinho. We've seen this with almost every great coach except Mr. Jurgen Klopp. He's never dialed it back ever. And I feel like that's another reason I don't know how quickly it resolves, in that you need a bit more of that Sterling, Sané, KDB, David Silva energy, but without sacrificing the defense.
But I would agree. I think you just need to get younger. If I had nitpicks for Pep, because I don't have a lot of criticisms, I think this squad is not as good as people think it is. If I had nitpicks, it's like, why aren't the youngsters playing more? And maybe they suck. Maybe it's a bad group of youngsters. But this isn't working. You don't have to keep banging your head against the wall. Gundogan, Rico Lewis pivot is not working. It's the Premier League. That Fulham game, I think I tweeted after the Brentford game, which they won, and he said it in the press conference. No one's ever torn them this apart on the counter ever. Back to the Barcelona days, no one's consistently just, and this is a mid-table Premier League side doing this to them. And so they outside of Gvardiol and Haaland, those are their two young, big space, half legs players. Foden was the third. He's had a very weird season. Rico Lewis is kind of small. He has to play because he's good, but he's very much he had to get benched in that Arsenal game because he's too small. and suddenly everyone else is the wrong side of 30, and it's crept up on them, and they haven't, even Bernardo is 30, Ake is 30, De Bruyne is obviously 33, Gundogan 34, Kyle Walker is 35 and played a full season last year, went to the Euros. No matter how much you think he's fallen off, he shouldn't be playing 90 minutes Sunday, Tuesday. It's not his fault.
He's like Jordan Henderson. He just leveraged his like stature into damaging the team.
But I think the Henderson thing, where people were frustrated because there were squad options available. Like, you could have played Curtis Jones more, you could have played etc. more. Whereas Kyle Walker, I think Pep is just forced. So this is a squad building problem more than a Kyle Walker or Pep problem. Like, who is he playing there? Yeah.
It's more so seeing Phil and Walker play so much for England that was a little annoying. I'm sure you understand. Over Trent.
So I have them in tier 3. I do think they're out of respect for the coach, out of respect for the core group of players who, if Stones is healthy, I think if Stones and Ake are healthy, I think they're a little better. Maybe they find a January signing that just, I won't say right the ships. They won't be the best team in Europe, but can they stabilize? Yeah.
And then become competitive in knockout situations and so on.
Exactly.
Yeah, with Haaland and De Bruyne, you can always be competitive in those situations. It feels like De Bruyne has fallen off physically so much now. Just like, even if you get vintage KDB, you get him every other week. Maybe you don't get him every week.
A well-rested City who have somehow signed a defensive midfielder in March, April, playing.
Who are willing to, who are humbled at that point, will be much harder to play. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so that's tier 3 for me.
What about Arsenal? What's going on this season? Is Mikel Arteta like just bringing out his inner Moyes? Is Odegaard I guess Odegaard, I've had to eat my words a lot. He's clearly important. But then yesterday, I heard not so nice things about Odegaard on the timeline.
He's had a very rough 10 days. I think the Odegaard thing is overplayed. Both sides. Like, I think he's just a good to great center midfielder. He's all phase. He's not really like a superstar attacker, so people don't want output from him. He can drop deep. He can play behind the lines, between the lines. He can do a lot. He's kind of like just an all-rounder. I think he's had a very bad 10 days, but I think he came back from the ankle thing and played, and has not missed a minute since. And I just don't think you can do that. And so he's looked a little physically off it the last 10 days, and I don't think a player coming back from injury should, play 6 straight 90s, Sunday, Tuesday.
And so that's how bad you were without him? Really? Is that it?
Yeah, there is a squad building problem at Arsenal. They let Fabio Vieira and Smith Rowe go, who are fine, but not great players. And they trusted this 17-year-old kid who looks like he's going to be a superstar in Ranieri to fill the Odegaard gap. And this is classic kind of like club versus coach, or like maybe the player just isn't quite ready. It's the same with Güler, who probably solves a lot of Madrid's problem. He's just not ready.
With Güler, he's not physically there. Brahim is like faster, more explosive, and two-footed. And Modric and Ceballos are more central midfieldery, and he's in this weird gap where he doesn't do anything better than any one profile on the team. But yeah, back to so
Sorry.
You said he showed glimpses. Did you try like what was going on? Were you trying Nwaneri instead of Odegaard?
No. So I think they were trying him for like 30 minutes at the end of games. They were kind of. I think the plan was for him to like really kick off starting next Jan or Feb. Like, I think there was a plan in place, and the injury came at a bad time because the kid wasn't fully ready to be part of the team. He's shined whenever he's played. He has Phil Foden, David Silva vibes for sure. A little bit of both. He's fantastic. He's a fantastic player. But look, I can sit here and microanalyze all of Arsenal problems. Open play, breaking down deep blocks. Some of the I have qualms with some of the transfer business. Not this year. I think basically what happened with Arsenal is 2 years ago or 3 years ago, they were in the top 4 race, and they went out and got players that raised their floor, not their ceiling. They went out and got Gabi Jesus, Zinchenko, Trossard, Jorginho, all nice players, all great, and ROI financially, all great decisions. Right, like Jorginho is a 10 million player. He can come in, do a job. He'd play for everyone in the world at 10 million. Like, he'd be the third string at Real Madrid. Fine, that's fine. Trossard is also a lovely deal. Great finisher, can move. Just a guy. who can play at that level. And I think that window to this day is hurting them, because you have those 4 players, they're eating minutes and they're producing not at. Suddenly you went from a top 4 contender to top 3 in the world too quickly. And so the rest of your squad hasn't caught up. And last year, Arsenal, 8 out of their 11 starters played more than 32 League 90s. And that's not sustainable, right? That's, no matter how good your team is, you can't depend on Saliba never missing a minute, Saka never missing a minute, Rice never missing a minute. I know that these guys are physical monsters, and they continue to be physical monsters. And so they went out and had a great summer. They've added a lot of thrust with Timber and Calafiori. I'm quite comfortable saying I think Arsenal's best 11 is the best team in the world. I just think they have... They play this. Arteta's definitely on the conservative side on the coach. He doesn't want central dribbling. He doesn't want that. That's nice. That's easy to criticize. But at the end of the day, attack and defense is a trade-off, right? And when you give up, it's in the Premier League, which is essentially the Super League these days, and you give up, I think they gave up 2 shots to Everton, 2 shots to Fulham. You win most of these games. I think people are maybe overreacting a little to performances. I also think the substitutes and the players, like, this is a player quality problem, not a tactical problem. Like, I think at the end of the day, Jesus, Martinelli, Trossard, you just need one more superstar guy, one more superstar attacker.
Can I interest you in Rodrigo for 100 million?
Yeah, I think Rodrigo would be. Rodrigo's a hard one to gauge, because I think he's
not worth 80 to 100, but he also is better than, I think, multiple of those players on your team as well.
Oh, he's definitely play over. Even if you say he's as good as Martinelli, I think that's good enough for Arsenal at this point. They just need more. Like, Trossard is such a big drop off. Jesus is such a big drop off.
Really, from Martinelli? Also, I'm just getting a charger. You can keep going. So why didn't Martinelli just have a bad season as he started moving again, getting more chances?
Yeah, I think Martinelli is just he's one of those that frustrates fans, because he's also one of those that his best attributes are all off ball and physical, and like you need to set him up, and he's not going to create. People compare him to Saka, and it's an unfair comparison. I think he's a fantastic player, and he's probably he'd easily be a Champions League player, like squad player for a best in. He'd be in the idealized version. If you're the best team in the world, he's a fine 12th or 13th player. He works very hard. If you put him if you platform him correctly and give him some options, he'll score. He's a good finisher. Look, I think the year has kind of just gotten away from them. It sucks that the year City suck. Arsenal are probably not going to win the league. I understand all of the memes and the fun and the choking and they got 4 points dropped from 2 ridiculously crazy red cards, and then they got hurt a lot, and they played opposite to Liverpool. Liverpool, we said, have not gone to except to Arsenal, top 10 Premier League club. Arsenal have gone to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 away games in the period where Odegaard is missing, where Calafiori is missing, where Merino is bedding in, where everyone's hurt. And somehow they're not dead, right? And you can see this in the Champions League. If you watch the Champions League games, they took a Monaco side that is very, very good apart. They took a PSG side who I rate very highly apart. They're a very good team. There are problems.
It does feel like the team is just it feels like Calafiori, Timber, and the defense and Rice, they're all good enough, but you just need new attackers. And that's the vibe you get watching them too. You just see watching Arsenal, it's like the best defensive team in the world that doesn't capitalize on what their defense lets them do offensively. That's just what I feel sometimes. Much territory and a lot of players who play 3,000 minutes and keep recycling possession, which I think that needs to change. And either you bring on an attacker who makes it so you don't recycle possession, you get the goals, or someone with more threat in transition. Because it's like the situations you see Real Madrid get into, like for us, like dribbling through the middle, Vinny can do it whenever he wants. You don't ask for permission. And I think having an attacker who you can give that freedom other than Saka, you need another. I think you need It's
funny because this will sound funny, but Calafiori is really the kind of the key player. Calafiori just plays like a fucking madman. Like he doesn't ask for permission. He turns wherever he is. He's just picking the highest risk option and injecting a lot of pace into the game. And is it the best thing in the world for your attack to be depending on your two fullbacks? Probably not. But I would say, given the totality, the kind of dominance in different game phases defensively, the dominance on set pieces, which seems like it's continuing and very repeatable, and then the like every team now has to play almost a low block versus Arsenal, right? It's not almost it's a prerequisite to beating them that you have to give them the ball and kind of, because if you don't and you go out and press them, the build-up is quite solid. Saliba and Raya are quite good, and Timber at getting away from pressure. I think this is a very good team that's gotten a few unlucky breaks. At the highest level, like semi-final Champions League, final Champions League. Yes, superstar attackers win you games, not structures, not coaches, not tactical. But you can't ask for more for a team. And again, I think an underrated part of this is I think people don't understand how young this team still is. Like I know it's year 3, so people feel bored. Where's the Premier League? Where are the titles? Saka's 23, Timber's 23, Calafiori's 23, Martinelli's 23, Saliba's 24. Like there's nothing happening here that's they're one Leao, Kvaratskhelia, Rodrigo away from being quite easily the best team in the world.
And that's why it confuses me why they don't just go sign them this summer. Like, what are these Leaos doing in Milan? What is Osimhen doing? I mean, where did Osimhen?
I think by the way, the plan was to sign a superstar attacker this year. They just looked at the options, didn't like anything they liked. Sesko chose to stay, which was a smart decision by him. I think he needed the game time. Leao seems quite happy at Milan, and Leao is inside the football industry maybe a little not as rated as highly as the rest of that group. I think he's a little inconsistent.
He is inconsistent. He's very talented, but it doesn't feel like he's used his talent to become the best version of him. So what happened? Last question, I guess, and then we get to more tier. We'll bang out a few teams fast. But how's Ben White doing? Is he?
He tore his knee, so he's been out for 12 weeks. I think Ben White might have been what is the Americanism, Wally pipped or whatever. Like Julian Timber is
just better.
It's just a superstar. Like I love Ben White. He's a great passer. He is a football player in the sense that he's a guy who can play in any position, right? Like he's very positionless. He can play in center mid almost. Very intelligent footballer. Julian Timber just adds something to this team that is a superstar quality. I did not expect Timber to be so good defensively in 1v1. And he's been a lockdown defender as well as a great carrier. So, White's been hurt. That's definitely. I think if you look at it, this is such a small sample size. If you look at the games where Timber has played right back, essentially, Arsenal have just been a dominant machine. When they move him to left back and put Partey at right back, they lose a lot of that attacking thrust. And the game model, the Arteta game model, relies a little bit on margins and a little too heavily on 1v1 attackers, like having a Saka. Arsenal without a Saka would be a problem for sure. And definitely not the best team in the world without that kind of player.
Yeah, for sure. So let's go to the tier list. So if you're listening, we're doing the Madrid section is going to be for members only, but I'm just going to assume that we agree to put them tier 1 for now without.
I have them like the top of tier 2 actually. I have Bayern as my third tier 1 team actually. Obviously the Bundesliga is kind of is always hard to gauge. Despite Leverkusen winning last year, but I've watched that Bayern team. I think they suffer from the same thing Madrid suffer from. That Barcelona game that finished 4-1 or whatever was just an even game that they should have won. And that happens a lot with that Barca game model.
It
It's the
does.
same with that Madrid 4-0 or whatever, right?
Oh yeah, 8 offsides. Like if you replay that game 50 times, we probably win 4-0 like at least 50% of the time.
So Bayern have just been historically dominant defensive team. Company has really figured out the off-ball stuff. I think Musiala has taken a little bit of a leap that's been under-discussed. He's started to add some passing and some vision to his game. I think that's just a very complete team. I think Michael Olise is right knocking on that Lamine tier, and just like he's a very good player. That's a very good squad.
He definitely adds that little bit of quality they need to go over the edge, along with Musiala improvement. That's plenty. I'm skeptical of Kane in big games.
Yeah. But they don't need Kane. So this is the thing about Bayern, right? Like Telles, the youngster, is very good, and a lot of people can play striker. And like I don't think they need Kane as much as people assume. Like Kane was pretty banged up in that Madrid tie, and
he was. Kane banged up is not useful in big games. He becomes a liability, and it's been the case going back to the 2019 Champions League final when he came back injured in place and played with Son.
He's had a lot of like ankle and back stuff, and he gets a little immobile.
And Tottenham don't make the final if they have to play an immobile Kane at striker through the court against City, against Ajax. Yeah.
So I think Bayern are genuinely just a very good side. I think again they suffer from, they've had 2 big games this year and gotten very unlucky in both. So they went to Villa and lost in a really weird game, and then they went to Barcelona and lost in a very weird game as well.
Where do you put Barcelona then? So right now, as you can see, the left side is things we agree on. The right is we have a difference. So I put Real in tier 2 on the right.
Yeah, my tier 2 is essentially Real Madrid, Inter, Barca, and potentially Paris, who I've watched a lot and have had a hard time figuring out.
I don't think Enrique has it, man. When he does,
I agree with that. I have a soft spot for that squad. We've talked about this preseason. I have a soft spot. I really like their young talent. Like I think people underrate João Neves, Desiree Doué, Barcola. I think that team can play. Like Vitinha, I think that team is quite good. And the metrics back me up on this. So eye test is not so much. The metrics is they're number 1 in expected goal difference in Europe in top 5 leagues. I know the Champions League, people will go back and say they're almost out of the Champions League. That draw was brutal, and they've had really some very unlucky games. Like the Atletico game, very unlucky. You go to the Emirates and kind of lose on a set piece. It's not much you can do there.
But they play such a boring, like bad style in possession. Like he just thinks he can repeat 2015 Barcelona. The attackers will figure it out. He thinks he's Pep, but he's not. That's what vibe I get from him. And very restrictive in possession. Like the chances come sometimes, but and they're not so good that they're some defensive juggernaut. I think that's the problem.
Yeah, look, they are the number 1 attack in Europe again by XG. It is weird, right? Because Liga is not that bad. So I don't know what's going on. I watched the Lyon game yesterday. They beat Lyon quite handily. It has not translated to higher level competition. I agree.
Well, after watching Mbappe this season, I don't trust anything coming out of League One and never will ever again. That's a farmers league. It's a farmers league.
Yeah, I've typically had the opinion that like Liga is better than the Bundesliga to kind of judge attackers. But it's been a weird one for PSG. They're one of those. So I think for tier 2, Madrid, Barca, and PSG all have question marks. All have obvious question marks, right? Like Paris is like dominant locally. Why hasn't this translated? What's wrong with the game model? What's wrong with the coach? Barca, we can talk about a little. Madrid is the same. Madrid is kind of like a mess defensively, right? Like very easy to kind of pass around and haven't really clicked. They haven't made the trade-off work. They aren't that threatening in transition and on attack to make the times when they can get passed around worth it. And we can talk about the coaching and stuff like that. The only team, for me, the only team that, if I were a fan watching this, the only team that's like, why am I not in tier 1 again, is Inter, actually. Like, we know what Inter are. They're not sexy. but
they're not better than us, man. They're not better than us. Like, come on, they're not actually a better football team than Real Madrid.
They don't have the player quality to be better than you.
Yes.
So the upside is not there. But how confident are you that Carlo and the team figures this out this year? I wouldn't say 100% confident.
We will save that for the Real Madrid section. I know all of you want to hear it. It's more like it's like, even if I'm not, there's always a 50% chance we figure it out. And when we do, things work. If we don't,
so I agree with that. I think
floor is also high if we don't figure it out, is what I've seen so far this season, where we shit the bed and we're still like right there in every competition.
So this is where I disagree. I don't think the floor is high in Europe. I don't think that's true. I think the floor is high in La Liga, yes. I think there's enough technical talent on that team, and La Liga is kind of slow-paced. It suits them. I don't think the floor is low. I think I saw Atalanta get at you. Atalanta are very good. What were the other Real Madrid games in the Champions League?
Also, where would you put Atalanta and Atletico Madrid? Like, those are two teams we need to throw in here.
Yeah, so for me, it's City, Leverkusen, Atalanta, Atletico in the last year.
Yeah, I agree with Atletico tier 3.
And Leverkusen probably the weirdest to judge there, because they do have some superstar talent. It's a good coach, but it's been a weird season. I would say those are the clear.
You have Atlanta over Inter. Inter over Atlanta, even though one team is good.
I just don't think that I could be wrong. I don't think that Atlanta game model scales up very well, to be honest. It's kind of like on paper, minus the Leganes game yesterday, Barcelona could have an argument for tier 1. But me and you are watching those games, right? It's not a way to defend good teams.
No.
You can't do that for 3 knockout rounds or 6 knockout rounds. And Bayern, who won the treble, got away with it because they had a lot more athleticism and they got a little lucky. But so I think Atalanta just don't. I don't think I'd be worried about them at the Champions League level. I do think they could win the league, though.
Yeah, that makes sense. Which
is the opposite for Inter. I think Inter could win the Champions League.
Yeah. No, that makes complete sense. And then AC Milan don't belong on this list, which is why losing to them was so embarrassing.
Yeah, so I don't think the floor is very low in Europe, man. You keep saying the floor is
I guess what I mean is, like, it's been a while since we had 2 super fast superstar attackers, and you feel the difference even when the tactics suck. You just feel it watching the games. I mean, you know how it goes. Like, the organization sucks, but hey, he had 8 offsides against Barcelona. How many players in history can you point to and they even make the run and get open and have this?
I don't disagree that, again. If this is an upside ranking, right? If it's an upside ranking, I think Real Madrid are with Liverpool in tier 1 alone, maybe with Bayern, and Arsenal probably moved down actually. But this is the way I think of tiers is it's a 75th percentile outcome. It's not the best outcome. Like, normal shit happens.
So that's where I am, because if normal shit happens, Mbappe is way better than he has been so far.
I agree.
Even accounting for that. And we've seen the glimpses. The last Atlanta, he scored a good goal. Girona, he scored a good goal. If he scores that way, if he was doing what he did those games all season, you would have us tier 1, because we would have won enough games. But he hasn't. My
issue has not been in La Liga with the offense or in the Champions League. I think my issue has been more in. Look, you used to get away with like weird defensive structures because you kept the ball enough with Cruz. You had moments where you could just calm down play. You can keep the ball defensively, right? Like defensive possession. As kind of like, I have the ball. Let's reorganize. Let's calm down a bit. I think you've lost all semblance of that this year. And the structures are.
Yeah, keep going. I'm just playing some outro music as we wind down. But no, you're 100% right. Cruz's absence has changed a lot. It's definitely made things a lot harder. And he's definitely changed a lot. Like, we're not the same team, no question.
And you get into
a little louder than expected. Sorry, but you can talk.
No, it's fine. It's fine. You get into a basketball game with a European level. This is what happened with the Milan game, right? You go into a basketball game, and even AC Milan have enough talent to beat Real Madrid at the basketball game. Like, you have to be able to slow it down sometimes.
For sure, no question. And one thing that's changed is I think the difficulty of creating a chance has somehow gone down even without Cruz, but the ability,
I agree.
And yeah, which is so cool to see. It's like, okay, we lost our guy, and I'm just gonna have to pause it while talking. I think I made it a little too loud before, but
no, it's okay.
But you're right, and we're gonna talk about that on the following episode. I don't want to give away too much. But yeah, things have changed, and I think the tier list we have here is a good foundation for the rest of the season. If you had to close out and pick one team that's going to change the most out of nowhere, who would it be? I mean, I think Atletico or City.
Most out of nowhere.
City or Atletico. I don't know about Atletico. I think City is the highest upside, and I think maybe Barcelona.
Yeah, I think Madrid and City have upside. City less so. I would say obviously I think the consensus in the media or wouldn't have Arsenal at tier 1. So in that way they have upside. I just think they're being not properly rated. There's people forget that before the era where superstar attackers decided these Champions League ties, defensive solidity in the set piece was kind of also the name of the game, right? Like, and so can I see Arsenal going and winning on a scrappy, horrible goal at the at the Allianz or at the Bernabeu? Yes, alias. And so I think people would be surprised if that happens. So in that way, I think in consensus, again against consensus, I don't think people realize that Inter in Europe, if you take the last 18 months and you take away 15 minutes versus Atletico, like they killed Atletico for 75 minutes and then somehow just completely collapsed. They would be in back-to-back finals. I'm not saying they would have won anything. I think they're just a very tough animal in Europe to play.
And that's why the Atletico tie is one of the most bizarre occurrences.
One of the most crazy things I've ever watched.
Yeah.
Atletico just doesn't feel like they have the talent in the back line at the moment. But Simeone has done a good job, and the signings have been good.
They don't. They're on the run. They don't have the talent. I think Sorloth is not a big game fit, and Alvarez.
The center backs seem like the problem. I think, from my understanding of having watched them a few times, the defense is the problem, not the attack, which is weird for Atletico. They're quite open.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they've been bad at signing defenders the whole time Simeone's been here. They inherited the first good Simeone defense, and they never replaced Godin. They replaced Courtois with Oblak. That was the one successful thing, and they've been.
I remember.
They've had Oblak for a decade. When Miranda left, they just promoted Jose Maria Jimenez from within. But I haven't remembered them signing a top center back. Maybe ask me.
The most intriguing team for me is actually Paris, because I believe we have PSG City, and the loser might.
I don't think they have a game model to win, because I think when it comes down to it, he goes away and home and plays with the style. He plays like City. And the players aren't good enough, the same problem City have. So I think, Dortmund last year kind of sealed Enrique's. I feel like that was emblematic of how bad Enrique can be, even with a talent advantage. The talent advantage counted for nothing against Dortmund. I feel like they didn't take advantage of it at all.
Yeah, that Dortmund team is weird, right? That Dortmund team basically
they gave us.
That's my point. They dragged everyone into kind of a chaos battle. They were able to drag everyone into. They could have looked at any match and said we could have won that, which is a weird thing to say about such a young, not rated team. I'm interested in PSG. I'm interested to watch them a lot more. I think the top of Ligue 1 is not bad. Monaco are a top 16 Champions League team. Brest have qualified. So I'm weirded out. How come PSG are best expected goal difference in the league, undefeated in Liga, they're not playing scrubs, because Monaco have beaten Barcelona. Brest have beaten a few big teams in the Champions League. That's not a bad league right now. I believe Lille are also.
Yet nobody expects them to do well in the Champions League either. Even when they watch the games, people will be like, okay, Enrique goes out, sets up some defensive possession that doesn't work, and they always lose the same way, I feel like.
Brest are 7th, Lille are 8th, Monaco are 16th in Europe. that's not a horrible league. Like if you're undefeated there's something there. So I want to watch them more. I want to understand what's going on, because prior to the season, I agree with all your Enrique concerns. I think that squad might be like the second or third best squad in the world. That's how highly I rate Vitinha, João Neves, Barcola, the center backs. Like I think they've assembled some talent there that people don't rate, that are very, very, very good. Zier Emery. There's a lot of talent on that PSG side. I'm interested.
Yeah, I mean, going through the table, Milan are 12th in the table, ahead of Juve, Real. Milan aren't a good team. I know they can play. Yeah, like obviously it speaks to how bad we were that we lost. But I do think this table is kind of misleading right now.
Milan got a very easy draw, and their hardest match they beat you, right? So that was kind of like.
And 3 days after the Clasico, when the coach thought he should go press high again because he was just desperate to issue a statement victory immediately after it. But yeah, well, I guess we'll talk more about La Liga and Real Madrid in the following episode. Thank you everyone for